Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. Each week I come on here and I talk about the birth of a new dimension. What do I mean when I say these words? And what in the world is the flying rainbow lasagna? So the new dimension that I am referring to is a combination of the formerly divergent realms of spirit and matter. And we can replace that word spirit with pure consciousness or pure energy or thought forms or intelligence. And if you hear crunching in the background, that is my dog, because I gave her a chew toy to kind of keep her occupied while I do things like recordings like this. So we'll just say like there is crunching in the background, and I'm sure you can recognize that. Matter and energy, these two forms of what can I say? Substance and power have been divergent, held apart in definition. This is the word I'm trying to come up with. They've been defined as separate items for a very long time in human consciousness. Even Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared. We've got E, which is energy on one side of the equal sign. We've got mass on the other side of the equal sign. And these are like items on a seesaw that are in constant dualistic opposition in every aspect of our modern world in terms of chemistry and in industry and where we get our energy from are all based in this dualistic opposition. You know, the idea of taking energy and condensing it down into some solid form that can be saved over time and then releasing it when you want to. Like, to use an old-fashioned example, a stick of dynamite. Take energy and solidify it in the form of a stick of dynamite. Then when you want to release that energy, you light the fuse and boom, the energy comes out. Well, what we do now, or what up until this point, humans are doing now, is have these combustion engines where you've got gasoline, you've got refined petroleum product. This is energy that is stored in the form of this petrochemical. And then in order to liberate the energy, we put it through a car's engine, and that makes the car go. So all of this, it's always matter versus energy. Or here's another one. Self or ego structure versus context. And this is another part of, just like we are given this fictional distance between matter and energy, we're also given this fictional distance between self and context. And the truth is there's no separation between self and context. My boss is now licking my face. That really we are seamlessly integrated into our environment on every level. From the air that is in your lungs that then also communicates with the rest of the atmosphere and goes into everybody else's lungs, or, carbon dioxide transpiring into plants, to the microbes on the surface of your skin and that line your alimentary tract, which are also seamlessly integrated into the microbial realm of the rest of the environment that you're within, and also in terms of time and consciousness, that your particular bundles of timelines upon which you travel as an individual are seamlessly integrated with the timelines and the possibilities that exist as other people's roads of time. And other people can also be other microbes or other dogs or other trees or other bumblebees or, blades of grass outside. That all of these different organisms are on timelines, and those timelines are all woven together. The flying rainbow lasagna is a shape that brings together formerly divergent realms. So this is along the lines of topology or the study of surfaces. And although it might be difficult because I'm just using my voice to describe this over the radio, and I love having a radio show, however, I am used to a different way of communicating where I can pick up a pencil or, like actual paper or something like that and make an example by drawing or writing something. A torus is a donut shape, and a flying rainbow lasagna is a higher dimensional donut shape. And what basically happens when you take that torus that has this tor, or the donut hole, or the 0th dimension, which is the convergence point, where all of the lines of energy and force emerge from and where they all return to. What we do is we take that central convergence point and begin to oscillate it up and down or back and forth or side to side or diagonally in a higher dimensional context. So this is the key. It's not a secret. It is like the crucial recognition to get to the next level of consciousness, which is bringing together these formerly divergent realms of spirit and matter. because we're given this fiction, these are all these parallel fictions. Like, you are separate from your context. Matter is separate from energy. Here's another good one. The past is separate from the future. So what Flying Rainbow Lasagna does is it folds or it bends the fabric of space, time, and consciousness so that these formerly divergent realms can now touch and communicate. So in the sense of the individual, it means that the inside becomes the outside and the outside becomes the inside. Your inside, your inner world. I don't just mean like your intestines where you put your food in your tummy. What I really mean is the invisible world of consciousness, like your dreams and your emotions and your passions and your desires and your imagination and your ability to make a wish. All of that inside stuff communicates seamlessly with the external world. So it's a fiction that these two worlds are separated. And it's also a fiction that matter is unresponsive to thought. So the teachings of the quantum scientists in the early 20th century helped everyone to begin to understand that thought affects matter. But they didn't go all the way. And in many ways, it was just another bar on the cage because it gave that constant dualistic opposition of matter and energy. And what we really need to do is understand that this is a seamless integration, like a continuum, not thing versus thing, but a continuum of these two different states or these two different beings. So what happens when Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a dance, it is a genetic dance. Your DNA is dancing all the time. This is one new dance movement that you can add to your DNA and transform and supersede the limitations that have been placed into DNA maybe 10 or 20,000 years ago in what I, refer to lightheartedly as the fall, but that is not a very fun topic at all. And I usually, I refer to it here on this show weekly and, try to talk about it in a productive way, what our lives were like before we were genetically distressed, genetically constrained, and what our lives are like now. And I talk about what life was like before, not just like the rosy utopian world that we came from, and now to contrast that with our horrible, hellish present existence. No. But to give an idea of the way that things are supposed to be. Like right now we are in a hacked system, and hack in this sense I do not use as a good word. We're in the sense of a time system that has been intentionally distorted and repurposed from its original purpose. And that time system is our DNA is part of that time system. Your DNA is the integument that ties you together from moment to moment. So we move through time, jumping our consciousness or our sense of awareness like the needle on a record from moment to moment, from body to body. We're not in the same body that we were in 10 minutes ago. We've jumped our consciousness. And the thing that makes us jump is the dance of our DNA. And when your DNA stops dancing, it means you're dead. And you're not jumping forward into any future bodies. Your consciousness has ceased its movement through time. So that jumping movement and dance of your DNA, when it is limited and constrained, means that you can only jump onto certain timelines. You can only experience certain events in time. And so humanity, as individuals and as a whole, and the entire planet, has been limited in terms of what events can be experienced. And this new invention, the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, means that we are no longer limited by those previous sets of constraints. We now can put together all new forms of variables in all sorts of new, fun, and interesting ways. Variables in terms of your individual body, the way your body functions, the way your body moves through time, what timeline you are experiencing as an individual. And also, you're not just one lone musician playing in your own garage. You are connected to the symphony of life. So when you transform and metamorphosize, you also affect the entire world around you. This is why it is a narrative fiction that you are an ego separate from your context. You're not separate from your context. Quantum observership tells us that just the act of looking at something changes that thing. So that's a big step upward from mere objective materialism that says a thing is a thing. It doesn't change just because you look at it or you don't look at it. And I laugh in scorn and derision how silly you are to even think that. Because that's what most people think. Like you're a little kid. Like little kids think that you disappear when they close their eyes. It's like they're hiding from you. If they close their eyes, it's like, no. That's actually, there's some real profound truth in there that we as observers are creating the world around us. We're painting the world with the paintbrush of our perception and our imagination. Now we can ask this question, but wait, Aurora, if we are painting the world with the paintbrushes of our imagination and perception, why is the painting so ugly? Why does it contain suffering? Why does it contain pain? Why are babies born with brain cancer? Why do children eat out of garbage heaps? And the answer is because of the distortion of the time field. So we are not living within the system as perfect system the way it was created and intended. Just like our DNA has been harmed and degraded from its intended, dance movements, the entire system has been changed because the DNA is part of this larger time structure. Your DNA is part of a larger entity that has a metabolism that's based on the flow of time. Like you've got a metabolism it's based on the flow of time. We perceive it as the flow of oxygen, the flow of nutrition, the flow of blood through your body. And that if those items are disrupted, then you can't be alive anymore. And if time itself is disrupted enough, then the larger metabolic entity that uses time as its blood in its veins cannot live anymore either. So this is a dire circumstance, not only for us as little individuals. It's like your lives, individual lives, were subverted. That means, like, let's say you're supposed to be going from point A to point B, but instead of point B, your intended destination, you end up at point Z, point W, point Q, point, RST, all the way down at the end. Like you end up far afield. And this is what dark magic is. Dark magic, and this is magic like in terms of Arthur C. Clarke's definition of magic, that it's a sophisticated form of technology. And it is non-terrestrial. So I make a distinction between terrestrial technology or the terrestrial technosphere. This is everything that's been invented on Earth by humans using Earth stuff. That's the terrestrial technosphere. But there is this extraterrestrial world of technology that runs on trapped and victimized consciousness and DNA that is limited in its full expression. And so I like to use the example of this silly cartoon show called Rick and Morty. There's an episode called the Ricks Must Be Crazy, where this mad scientist who is the main character has a UFO clank, flying spaceship, and it won't go one day. And he finds out he's got a dead battery. So he looks under the hood and he says, I got to go inside my battery and tinker around and figure out what's going on. Because it turns out his battery is powered by a microverse. He debigulates himself. He goes into the microverse. And first of all, he says to everyone that lives in there, I am your God. Worship me. Remember me. I made you and I made your entire culture and I made everything that's here. And P.S., why are you not emitting all the energy that I need for my purposes? And, there's been some disruption there. And so he investigates the disruption. The whole point of why I'm bringing up this silly cartoon show, which also has a lot of potty humor, so don't take my recommendation with several grains of salt, but that particular episode is worth watching for its philosophical content. We are here in this realm that is third dimensional, like you're in a box, you're sitting in a room, and we are moving through time, so we're moving along fourth dimensional timelines, and we are constrained in our ability to perceive and in our ability to choose timelines because we've been placed under these constraints in order to power a larger system. That system is dark magic. That's like the UFO clank metal spaceship that our consciousness is currently powering, not necessarily according to our will and consent. That most of us are not like, yes, sure, I will emit fear and terror and suffering and pain so that you, higher dimensional entities, can fly around in clank metal spaceships. Most of us are not doing that. And this is exactly what's happened with our life trajectories. Each one of us has a life trajectory, like a particle is supposed to be from point A to point B, but energy is siphoned off and we are sent askew. This happens to almost every single person here on the planet. And instead of achieving the objective of point B and, like the final denouement of that narrative story and trajectory through time, we instead become subverted and end up all the way over on QRST, ZW world. And those are the peripheral timelines that we're not supposed to be experiencing, and they end in death. We're not supposed to experience death. The reason why we go askew and drive off the road of infinity is because we are literally forced off the road. Our willpower is subverted. Our attention is diverted. The dance of our DNA is constrained and distorted. I won't tell you all of this in excruciating detail without reminding you of the solution, which is flying rainbow lasagna. That is like taking the flat paper of time and being able to origami, fold it into new configurations so that now everyone can regain their higher faculties. Now everybody doesn't have to blindly drive off the road of time 10,000 times before you finally figure out the wormhole to get out of here. And so I'm trying to say, it's a distorted time field up until this point, and lives have been hijacked. So some lives have been truncated, artificially cut short. Some lives have been artificially extended. This is dark magic. Dark magic is not terrestrial. Yes, if you don't know that extraterrestrials exist, I don't even know how to have a conversation with you. Thank you for listening, but I just don't even know how to find a common ground. So yes, everyone on Earth, consciousness exists elsewhere. First of all, consciousness exists at levels that are under-recognized on the very planet that you're on, and also consciousness exists in various divergent places, not necessarily in human containers. And that the consciousness that is non-terrestrial, we can divide it up roughly into two camps: those beings who use technology and those beings who do not require technology. And I'm one of those beings that does not require technology. I did not fly here in a clank metal spaceship. I did not land on the lawn of the White House and say, I'm Aurora, take me to your leader. That's not what happened. What happened was I created a topological or surface-based construct called the flying rainbow lasagna, a new shape. And this new shape is like folding the fabric of space-time and consciousness into a new origami. I found a way, developed a way, invented a way to take the DNA, raw materials, potential for life that is in this physical human body, and make it dance in a new way so that it could exhibit new characteristics. And the new characteristics are not silver eyeballs or, something like purple hair, something that's like a biological protein transformation. The new characteristics that are exemplified are a new experience of time. A new experience of both perceiving time and navigating the time field and creating new time structures to inhabit. One of the new and exciting ways the flying rainbow lasagna can be applied to a new experience of reality is to bring together consciousness or spirit or energy rather with matter. That in the objective materialist viewpoint, these two things are separated and matter is just dead stuff. And you, your body is just made of dumb, stupid, dead matter, just a bunch of molecules, but it's you, the driver, the occupant, that gives, some life force to the capacity to move through time. And the flying rainbow lasagna means that consciousness combines with matter everywhere. It is a new way of understanding matter. Matter responds to thought. What if matter was a bunch of Play-Doh, a bunch of potential stuff, goo, and it shaped itself according to how you think about it? Wow, then life would be very, very different. It's kind of like that movie, The Green Lantern. This guy gets a magical ring, and then he can use his imagination to manifest anything he wants that he can envision with his imagination. This is what the material world begins to become when we combine together the formerly divergent realms of spirit and matter through the flying rainbow lasagna. So I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a promoter of the science viewpoint. However, I use a lot of science words in order to get some ideas across. So one of the things we can do with flying rainbow lasagna in order to transform the definition of what matter is to form covalent bonding over time. So first, the definition of what is covalent bonding. In science, it is the way of sticking electrons together, sticking molecules together by borrowing electrons in order to create molecules. So here's how building blocks work in the science definition of the world. We've got the atomic realm. Atoms have nuclei at their center, and then they have little electrons flitting around hither, thither, and yon in their outer electron shells. And those shells are supposed to have a certain number of electrons in them. It's like if you could say you've got 8 empty chairs here at the concert, and that means you can have 8 audience members, but maybe you only have 7. So then it's like, oh no, we've got an empty chair. What do? We fill that chair by borrowing an audience member from another atom. And this is called bonding. This is the covalent bonding, where you're like, okay, I'm an atom. I've got these, 8 openings over here. 7 of them are filled up, but I'm not happy until I get that full house. I want to have 8 participants, so I'm going to borrow a participant from that guy over there. And this means that that one atom is bonded to the other atom, and those atoms bonded together make a molecule. Molecules are actually good things. Like, I'm drinking some water right now. My water is made of molecules. It's made of hydrogen and oxygen atoms that are bonded together, making a lovely, delicious, tasty molecule. And the capacity for molecules to be created, is literally essential for our experience of, an embodiment of life, like biological embodiment of life. Covalent bonding over time means that we can fold the fabric of space-time and consciousness. If you are one hydrogen atom right now, and you don't have your little oxygen atoms to bond to, you can bond with an oxygen atom that is non-local in time and space. Before this, you could only bond with another, available oxygen atom that was available in the vicinity, like in the same place where you live and at the same time that you live. So if you live in California and it's, 407, then you need to find another little atom that also lives in California that also is available at 407 to bond with. You can't find one that lived millions of years ago. You cannot find one that lives in the same time, but might live in Australia or Antarctica or at the bottom of the ocean somewhere. So it's like getting married. You got to find your spouse, your future husband, or your future wife has to be someone who lives in the same time and place as you do. You can't marry someone from 1,000,000 years ago or someone from the future or someone that lives in a far distant realm. And the whole idea of Flying Rainbow Lasagne is that it now becomes possible to partner up with particles that exist either in the past or in the future, or in a far distant realm. So it's a new form of matter that is non-local. So it is not only limited by the capacity for bonds to be made with other atoms in the same time and place, but they can be made with atoms in a previous time, or in a time of future potential, or in a far distant time. What would that matter even look like? How would we define it? So this becomes a challenge, because how can we perceive over time? How can we even perceive these bonds over time? So you can also take in genetic inspiration from other beings that have lived a very long time ago, or that will live in a very long time. And this is like the same way that retroviruses can insert crucial genetic ideas into a genome. It's like editing. Like, we're going to snip this out, we're going to stick this in, got a new opportunity here. It's like it's genetic mashup for making music. It's like the melody goes like this, but then we're going to take a little snippet of another song and just stick in a little bit of that other song and transform what this, present song can be. In order for mammals to be mammals and carry their live birth, that is what had to happen. There was a retrovirus that came into different mammalian genomes at different times. Like, it was different for a rabbit than it was for a primate. But the same eventuality happened. The retrovirus genetically inserted the possibility for having a fetus successfully attached to the inside of the womb. That if that hadn't happened, nobody had the secret as to how to do that. It's like, we want to play the song, how to have a baby, but we don't know how, because we don't know how to have live birth. So a retrovirus had to actually give those little bars on that little measure, is what I mean, like bars on a musical scale. That little ditty had to come into the genome, and it's an idea. So you can gain crucial ideas by connecting with beings that lived very long times ago, or that will live in a very long time, or that are non-local to where you presently are living. Maybe there is a similar characteristic that a desired intention, like the desire to have live birth, but a similar missing characteristic, like a puzzle piece that you don't have. How do you do it? I don't know how you do it. Well, that guy over there knows how to do it, but maybe that guy over there lived 1,000,000 years ago, or maybe that guy over there lives on another planet in a different star system. How do you get information from that guy over there? And the answer is not you call him on the telephone, or send him a paper letter or something like that. The answer is you fold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness and get that information through your genetic antenna. Your genes are antennae. Yes, so DNA is a transceiver. It means it transmits and it receives. And I think I speak too much or emphasize too much the negative, pesky occupiers of the interstices or the turds who refuse to flush. They are certainly affecting the human genome, and they're speaking through many people, and they've also set up many aspects of human society in order to foster the loudness of their voice and of their self-expression. But there's also angels. There's like screwed up, horrible, distorted, mean, evil beings that occupy the membranes between worlds. And then there are really good musicians that can sing on key and that they know the melody and they know what the heck they're doing. And those beings we would define as angels, even though I'm not a biblical literalist, but we're just working with the vocabulary that of this time and place. So yeah, I don't mean to focus so very much on the demons or negative beings that are influencing human thought, but it's hard because they really stink. They're like the worst members of the band, and they're amplified, and they're making their loud, crappy music everywhere. So it's hard, like, not to hear them, not to focus on them. And then there's very, very beautiful, delicate, harmonious music that might be more difficult to hear. And part of this is the mind that humanity is using right now. It's not the human mind. It is the mind that humanity is using right now. And the mind actually originates from, it's programmed by, it's like software that comes from those negative occupiers of the interstices. Their crappy mind has been imposed upon human mind. Your real mind is the mind of bliss, where you don't have to use verbalization in order to think or share your thoughts. But the crappy human mind that most people are familiar with and most people self-identify with as mind, like that's my mind thinking, is the verbalized mind. And the verbalized mind, pardon my French for saying this, is just crap. It's just totally worthless. And I have to use words to speak here on the radio because I can't pick up a paper and pencil or to use a digital whiteboard or something like that. But there's a real reason why I've chosen to express my truth through things like, abstract music and abstract color, form, shape, and line. It's a language of vibration. And that words, as we are using symbolic auditory sound structure, are inherently flawed. And our system of interpreting the words that we hear is also inherently flawed. This is why I say that language is a virus. And it's like a subprogram that is being run on the hacked human operating system, OS human, that was invented by those negative occupiers of the interstices. So everybody gets this verbalized mind. When you're a little tiny baby, you download the app, How to Talk to Other Humans. And that means that your mind gets trained to this verbalization, and it doesn't have an off button. This is part of why it is crap. Its structure is crappy, and the fact that it doesn't have an off button is crappy. And if you could write a review for this software that you downloaded, I think everyone would say, yeah, this is a very crappy software that does it barely does what it is supposed to do and has all of these horrible drawbacks, including never being able to be turned off. Who in the world would want that software program? So this is the idea of meditation and mindfulness. It is the beginning of reining in and beginning to create a pause button on the verbalized mind. Because the verbalized mind is like the amplified, horrible musicians that's constantly talking, blah, 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 and distracting us internally, making it very difficult to listen to our true mind, which is not a verbalized mind. So, I mean, it's ironic because I'm here talking, but most of the time when I'm in my true mind, I'm not talking and I'm not verbalizing with my mind, and I'm, painting or drawing or listening to music or making music. And it's very much the same mind state as an athlete when they're in the zone. So, and sometimes I feel that way when I'm out walking with my dog, and it's like we're just having a gentle stroll. I'm not huffing, I'm not puffing, and my body feels good, and I'm just walking along, and I don't have to think anything. That's the idea. You actually don't have to think when you're in your true mind. There is no effort required. You move effortlessly through time from one moment to the next, and things naturally fall into place. So this is what it's like when you're a musician and you're playing a song that you really know, or when you're an athlete in the zone, like I said, no huffing and puffing. When I'm making my artwork, I know exactly what to do. I don't actually have to verbalize. Use red now, pick up the paintbrush. I don't have to think like that. All I need to do is intend for these things to happen, and they all happen. They all fall into place. And that's our true mind. So again, I make a distinction. This is not the bliss of a lobotomized idiot. It's not like I'm like, oh, everything is great, and, I don't have to think at all. It's not like, I'm not like an idiot. That's what I'm trying to say. If anything, I find that I am functioning at a higher level when I am in my non-verbalized mind than when I'm in my mundane, verbalized, choreful mind. My choreful mind that reminds me, like, must pay water bill, must do laundry, must clean the floor. That is all worthless. Like, the truth is, you would clean the floor anyway, even if you didn't have that verbalized mind telling you to do that. Like, you don't actually need to have a verbalized mind telling you, eat a sandwich. Like, your tummy tells you to eat a sandwich. You know what to do. So the point is, this extraneous, poorly written software overlay has been foisted upon humanity since what is known as the fall of consciousness, probably about like 10 or 20,000 years ago. And humanity has, for the large part, identified as that is a self and that is originating from humans. It doesn't originate from humans. Again, like, if you don't know that there's extraterrestrial life and consciousness, I don't know how to be in this conversation with you. It originates from extraterrestrial non-human sources, all right? That the mind that humans are using doesn't come from humanity. What a huge, flawed presumption. No, it doesn't come from humanity at all. It didn't arise naturally. It's like this bumbled together, like I just keep saying, crappily written software program. It's intentionally poorly structured. It is intentionally limiting and constraining. It's not meant to be freeing. It's like cumbersome. It's meant to drag you down. Hold on a minute here. Yeah, so it's very much like this Kurt Vonnegut short story called Harris and Bergeron, where the occupants of that future dystopia are all burdened with various contrivances to prevent them from using their natural talents. So if they're really good dancers, they have sandbags tied to their legs. If they're really smart, they have, microchips inserted into their brain to make it harder for them to think clearly. Whatever they are good at, they are given impediments that prevent them from using their natural talents. This is what the human mind overlay is. We each have these wonderful natural talents and also the tendency towards health and vitality. And that human verbalized mind reduces joy, reduces vitality, reduces health, and pretty much is a constraint or limit or impediment on the full expression of all of our true inner gifts and talents, be they athletic or musical or artistic or healing, that basically in order to get into that level, to tap into that level of inner divinity, what we need to do is press pause on the super crappy software system known as the human mind. And that's meditation and mindfulness. There's all sorts of different ways of doing it. And I don't pretend to be like the expert or the only school of meditation. In fact, I don't even really teach meditation. I figured out things that work for me. And there's all sorts of different ways of doing it. So you can overwhelm the structured crappy mind, with like a mantra, just repeating a phrase or a word over and over again. Or there's observation, where it's just like, a cloud, a thought floated by just like a cloud, but you do not give energy to that thought or, fill it up with gas like a car that goes so it can keep going. You're just like, there's a thought there. And those systems like that, they give some amount of emotional distance. Non-identification with thought structures means that you can just observe them and be like, okay, there's thought there. But the thought still exists. And then it gets into, it's a question of getting into the higher levels of self-cultivation, where at a certain point, you don't have to just ignore a bunch of poorly structured thought clouds that are floating on by. Like, I'm really a big proponent of this. You don't just have to zen your way through a lot of suffering and abuse and really mind rape. That these intrusive thoughts are not supposed to be a part of our mind. They're not supposed to be there. They're like intruders to the house. You don't have to just sit cross-legged in the middle of your floor while you got burglars coming in and out your house and be like, I'm just going to sit here passively, peacefully, don't let it get to me. Like, no, actually, you don't have to do that. At a certain point, you can be like, wow, I'm going to close the door. I'm going to lock the door. I'm going to put like a big giant crowbar against the door, like one of those things they've got in New York City, or, some kind of giant padlock or something like that. Like, I'm going to get security. I'm going to get encryption. I'm going to prevent these freaking burglars from coming into my house. And that is a much more effective approach that I would advocate for everyone. And what is that approach in practice, in actuality? It is genetic encryption, because those burglars come in through genetic vulnerabilities. Just got done telling you all about how our DNA is a transceiver. You use it to transmit, like the vibrating strings of a guitar that are sending out sound, and you also use it to pick up sounds, to pick up ideas, to pick up thought structures from other beings. And a lot of the other beings that are intruding into our minds, they're crappy musicians. They shouldn't even be able to be playing. The only way that they are playing is through the subversion of the larger metabolic time system known as dark magic. They subverted the system. They play a crappy song that's called dark magic. It's all based in technology. Don't be impressed by it. It is not impressive technology. What is really impressive is your biological, naturally occurring architecture and mind. Because with that, with everything that's your birthday suit, what you have when you come here, when you're born, that is all that you really need in order to totally supersede these technological impediments. There's literally nothing that can be done in terms of technology that is effective enough to prevent you, each one of us as individuals, from achieving this metamorphosis of consciousness. It could be defined as ascension, but I'm not talking about the Christian rapture or Calgon take me away or going bye-bye in a clank metal spaceship. I am talking about a transformation of perception. In the same way that if a person's, you're sitting in your living room and you take an LSD tablet and then you're still sitting in the same living room, but you're perceiving things in a very, very different way. That is the level of metamorphosis of perception that we are talking about. But I'm not really an advocate for, taking hallucinogenic drugs. I'm not against it. I don't do it myself. I have to protect my brain from, overload. Some people use it, and I think that it is like a tool that can be subverted. It can be used poorly, but it can be used well. But the reason why I'm not really an advocate for that, it's kind of like training wheels, and it's not practical to take LSD every day, and we're supposed to be in this mindset every day. So I would say, at best, it helps you to break on through to the other side, helps you to open your doors of perception, right? And then once you do that, it's like, I don't think you should have to keep taking it. Definitely not every day, definitely not every weekend or whatever. I think that there are serious caveats about that, and about chemical exposure, and about whether it's pure and things like that. But, there are many things that we can do that help us to reach these transcendent levels of mentality. And so it's actually easier to take a tab of LSD than it is to do these other things, because they involve totally restructuring one's life, restructuring one's approach to moving through the time field, restructuring daily waking consciousness and sleeping consciousness. It's like having to train very, very hard as an athlete to run the marathon naturally, as opposed to, taking some magic elixir 1 minute before the race and then being able to run the race. So yeah, the training wheels might be good in the beginning, but I would not advocate for people to use them all the time. And it's much, much more effective to cultivate your own inner natural talents. Running the marathon means doing the metamorphosis of consciousness. And we are running the marathon right now. It's akin to being born from the physical womb. So we are presently in the realm of matter, the material world. This comes from the root word mother, matter, mother. Our consciousness has been submerged in the material world for, a certain number of years so that we can be cultivated and eventually emerge. Or gestate and emerge, just in the same way that little tiny babies are inside of their mamas in a protected place where they can be cultivated and gestate and then emerge. And when you get out of the womb and you're born, you get a lot more freedom, and you also have a lot more personal responsibility. So yeah, you have to learn how to move your body and how to eat and how to talk or communicate with other people and how to walk. And you also begin to take responsibility for the things that you're doing with your physical body. Well, we are right now, as consciousness, submerged in the realm of matter. And what we are learning to do is to transcend those limitations. And this is what I'm talking about when I say covalent bonding across time. Because your molecules of your own body are what you get to do this with. If there's anything that you own, it is your body. I'm wearing a shirt right now. Technically, I don't own my shirt. I'm just wearing it. It's just kind of on me. It's not really me. I think we all understand the distinction between this. Like if I put a sewing needle through the shirt, I don't feel it. It's not me. If I put a sewing needle on my skin, then I'd be like, wow, ouch, I feel that. It's me. So the only thing that we really own in this world is our own body. And I like to say that that's your quantum laboratory. It is, it's your own country. It's like saying that your epidermis are like your borders of your country, and no one else gets to enter your country without your permission. You have border security, and you also make the rules of your country. You can say, in my country, on every Tuesday is Taco Tuesday, you must eat tacos in Aurora Land on Tuesday. Like, you can make whatever arbitrary rules you want to make, and then you enforce those rules. And this is true of any organism, like my little dog. That's Jiki. She has her own body, and she is in charge of everything that happens inside of her own body. She owns that real estate. Every organism owns its own body as its own real estate. And so we get to do experiments like, what happens when I think this in this body? What happens if I do this in this body? I don't really get to take the molecules of my shirt and make them do covalent bonding across time. What I do get to do is take the molecules of my physical body and make them do covalent bonding across time. Make a completely new form of matter that is made out of the genetic oscillation of this body and the molecules and atoms of this body and the molecules and atoms that exist in divergent, other times and places. This is what the birth of a new dimension is. And I'm just going to make a very, very clear distinction here. It's not just me. Like, I hope no one thinks that it's like just Aurora. Like, no, all of us. Everybody's being born. The entire planet is being born. The entire cosmos is being born. We are treading new ground. With each footprint, we are making new pathways. We're in a realm now that is not defined by the past. And this also helps in terms of understanding, well, wait. I tried to do blah, blah, blah in the past and it didn't work. So how come it's going to work now? We're in a different realm. And this has everything to do with, there's lots of books that are like, think and grow rich, like how to, be a millionaire by controlling your thoughts, The Secret, and all these things. First of all, can I just say, like, a lot of those books are not relevant or not accurate because there's been this distortion of the time field. I'm drinking water, hold on. The distortion of the time field means that beings who are totally undeserving have been rewarded, and beings who are highly, highly deserving have been subverted, suppressed and starved. So in this time and place where everything was distorted, you could be the best person, sending out wonderful energy, helping everybody, doing all sorts of great stuff, and be paid like $1. That's $1 is not enough to sustain your activity in your life in this time and place. And then people who are horrible, who not only don't send out anything good, they, screw other people over, and they take things and they murder people. Those beings are being given lots of money. It's because we're in a distorted time field. But please do not throw up your hands in despair and say, oh no, it's a distorted time field. There's nothing I can do. Why even try? Because everything has changed. Birth of a new dimension. Everything has changed. So what that means is that now what you send out really does come back to you instantaneously and amplified. This is one of those basic cosmic laws that has been subverted. That's when the time field is not distorted. That's one of those laws that is running perfectly. What you send out comes back to you instantaneously and amplified. If you hear something funny, it's because my dog jumped on my lap and she's trying to kiss my face. Laws of the cosmos. There's all of these brilliant laws of the cosmos. The great conductor, the great composer is completely brilliant genius that made all of these fail-safe mechanisms, like the idea that if you do not conform to certain loving patterns of thought and self-expression, you're not allowed to be in the biological time field. That's like a fail-safe mechanism. It's designed to make it so that you can't be, some horrible loser miscreant that just wants to be alive in order to rape and murder and plunder and destroy. Like, that's not what's supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen is that you have the right intentions, you play the right music, you are born in the right time and place according to the great, conductor, composer, and you do the right things with your life. So there's all of these things when beings are like, I want to be free to rape and murder, that is, free to reduce other people's, freedoms. It's like, why are you even in the time field? Like, what is your motivation to come into the time field? It's like, why are you even in the band? Because you want to destroy music? Like, why are you even in the band? So those are beings that are intended to go to entropy. They're not supposed to be in the band. This is a huge distinction to make. And also, people are like, Aurora, you're all rainbow, but then when it comes down to it, you're kind of a hard ass about this. I'm like, yes, actually I am. I'm not some wishy-washy person that's like, just love everyone, just hug everyone. And when I say love, like, when I say love, I talk about real unconditional love. That real unconditional love means that if you see a poisonous snake, you're like, that's a poisonous snake over there. It doesn't mean you're going to go over there and kiss it and smooch it the way I kiss my cute little dog. It means you're going to avoid it because it's a horrible poisonous snake. So there are some organisms in this world that they have no intention of learning. Not only have they created a distorted time field where it is more difficult for you and I and other organisms to learn. P.S. This is not the schoolhouse for learning. This is like a torture house. It's a trap. It's a place to wring misery from, souls of people that are living here. And that's the juice that makes their UFO go. It's the misery that is wrung from this experience. It's not a place for you to learn. That is laughable. That is completely just ridiculous. Like, I drop my opera glasses. I laugh. Yes, of course, this was intended to be a schoolhouse for learning, but everything's been hacked and repurposed. So that's why it's highly presumptive to say, oh yes, everything that's happening is happening for a reason. No, actually, some of the things that are happening because we live in a distorted time field that has been created and for a very long time run by psychopaths. That's the reason why a lot of these things are in existence. So it's not like, if you're good, then good things will happen to you. And if you're evil, evil things will happen to you. And therefore, if something evil is happening to you, must be evil. No, that is twisted, flawed logic. Like I tell you about the Victorian mindset when people lived in the gutter, the 1800s. And they're like, those people that are poor and they live in the gutter must be because they didn't please God. God does not favor them. They did not please God, so God did not give them money. Like, no, actually what happened was they were born into profound poverty, never got an education, and society was completely structured to prevent them from having any amount of social mobility, so they could never rise out of their, gutter-like existence. No, it's not because God didn't favor them. So this is also how we can understand individual trajectories. Remember the idea of going from point A to point B? Point B is like total success, total health, total vitality, and having abundance and helping people and being healthy and happy and, having a family and longevity. And many people are subverted from that. And maybe they are isolated, or maybe they have disease, or maybe they struggle with addiction, or maybe they've never had financial opportunity, or maybe they are suppressed on every level. And that's not because they deserve it. And it's not because it's helping them to learn and to grow. P.S. Suffering is not didactic. It's another one of those basic premises that's flawed. You have to suffer in order to learn. No, actually you don't. You can learn through joy. And, I use my little dog as an example. She's a rescue. We've done a lot of training with her. I've done a lot of training her. And it's the royal we. I do it all through positive encouragement. I tell her 10 million times that she's a good dog. I tell her when she does something good. I use TREATS. I have to spell it out so she doesn't get too excited over there, in order to reward good behavior. And she learns through joy. And I never do things like strike her. I found that, yelling, all of that, getting upset if she does something wrong, none of that is productive. One time we had a workman that was doing some work in the apartment next door in a different place, and she kept on barking because the guy was being loud. And I kept on saying to her, like, no, be quiet, and all of these things, and none of it worked. Everything just escalated and got higher and higher. She got more upset, I got more upset, nothing got fixed. Everything escalated. And that was the one time that just taught me very clearly, like, that does not work. And what really does work is, a more gentle approach, positive reinforcement. So yeah, seriously, the great composer, the great conductor understands that in terms of our own individual development, and not to, condescend to us by comparing us to dogs being trained, but, humans we're on a journey of learning, just like all of these organisms here. We are learning through our experiences. We can learn through joy. We do not have to learn through suffering. We do not have to learn through being given cancer, heart attacks, car accidents, death of loved ones, rampant anxiety, rape. That actually does not help us to learn. No, what actually helps us to learn is being rewarded effectively for our good intentions and good behavior. And we're in this distorted time field that, as I've explained, very much does not presently, up until this point, reward good behavior. Here's the way it should be. It should be like, hey, I just sent out a positive thought structure to someone else, and now I'm getting something back from the cosmos that I really need, like either food or money or a place to live or a nice hat or whatever it is that you need. That's how it should be. And it should be instantaneous. And of course, a lot of the distortion of the time field has been in delay. It might be like, okay, great, you did something great for someone else 15 years ago, and we're just going to make sure that it takes 100 years for that, for the check to finally reach your bank account. And it could be your energetic bank account for the cosmic thank you to reach you. Like, at that point, you're going to be dead. You're going to be dead already. Even the delay of 1 year is too long. Each one of us should be instantaneously rewarded with feedback from the cosmos based upon our, intentions and actions. And that's how you actually learn. This is not what's been happening. And so the beings that are malevolent, that have been distorting the time field, they use that capacity in order to constantly defer their own justice, facing their own responsibility for their actions. It's like, oh yeah, I murdered 20 million people, but let's deal with that in 10 years. Like, let's just kick the can down the road and not have to deal with that right now. And instead, give me $1 billion right now. This is like not even an exaggeration. There are literal political figures and, whatever high-level bankers and people who are, up until this point have been affecting human society quite a lot. And they kill hundreds, thousands, millions through either their policies, their wars, or the products they create. And then they rake in billions, which they get to store in their offshore accounts. And they're like, oh, yes, I'll pay the price for those, millions of victims in 10 years. And then 10 years comes along. It's like, how about next lifetime? How about another time? Like, no, let's just kick that can down the road. Well, the good news is that there is no more road to kick the can down. I can't even get the grammar for that right. Just as I was describing that the road in front of us is being created with each footstep of each moment. That's where we are. We're in a new realm that is a combination of spirit and matter, where matter responds to thought, matter responds to consciousness. The events of reality are the literal external projections of our internal worlds. And it's a collective reality because it's a collective projection of all these things that we've got inside. Many of us have been subjected to abuse, like psychological and sexual abuse. And what's happening in terms of what's the code words, Pizzagate, Pedogate, the revealing of historic and systemic sexual abuse in individual families, in various political structures, and in various industries. This is essential for healing on this planet. This is part of like tearing off the Band-Aid. You got to tear off the Band-Aid. You got to, in order for this real healing to happen. So the recognition of this, these practices that have been previously not only occult, meaning hidden, but there was like a spell that was across people's mouths that they couldn't speak about this openly, couldn't communicate about this openly. And the way that the healing actually is occurring is by not only consciously recognizing it, like intellectually thinking about it, and also speaking about it, that this is how you break the spell of the dark magic that's been going on. The sexual abuse is stealing and diverting the life force energy that would have been directed in towards healthy sexual partnership and procreation, and it's been taken and subverted horribly. Like, children have been subjected to abuse, people have had inappropriate sexual contact with inappropriate partners, and babies have been born that have not been supposed to be born. Babies have been killed that have not been supposed to be killed. And please do not ever take anything that I'm saying out of context and ever use my words as a justification for a eugenics agenda. Like saying, oh, Aurora said there's baby babies that were born that aren't actually supposed to be in existence. So let's kill them all. That's not what I'm saying. And please don't say, oh, Aurora said there's demons, the genetic code. So all of these people that have this particular genetic marker must be, sent to the guillotine. Please don't do that either. That's not what I'm talking about. It's actually way more complex. The solution is way more complex than just a guillotine. The solution is not death. It's not like kill, spindle, mutilate, destroy. Think of like those robots from Doctor Who, destroy, mutilate. No, it is not like that. The solution is to send those beings to entropy. And entropy is a state of non-being. Entropy is a state of being totally cold and frozen, without energy, without consciousness, and not moving through the time field. This is the rectification of the time field. They're erased, to be erased from being. That is different than sending someone to the guillotine, like chop off your enemies' heads and then, oh, look, they can be reborn in another context and you can deal with them again. No, we don't have to do that. We have this amazing opportunity here, this moment, in this generation, to rectify and heal the time field within our individual bodies, within our families. Like what you do in your body definitely radiates down your entire lineage, back to your ancestors and down to your descendants. You can make a decision to put down the genetic baggage and not pick it up again. And the genetic baggage can be, like a sense of personal victimization based on your culture or race. It's like, if there was a genocide in your culture, then say, oh, I'm a part of that culture and that happened to my ancestors and we're all victims because of it. You can say, no, that happened to previous generations. That was a very sad and horrible thing, but I don't have to carry that trauma in my body. And I definitely don't have to pass it down to next descendants, either your biological descendants, like your babies that you have, or thought descendants, because you can be like a writer that never has physical children, but if you write something in a book, your thoughts are passed down to future generations. So this is big, in terms of taking responsibility and what we pass on to the next generation. Even if you choose not to procreate or you cannot have a physical child, what you are doing and saying and what you send out and emit absolutely has an impact on the rest of humanity, on the rest of the planet, and on the future. And that's a burden of responsibility. Now you're starting to get it. When you say, like, wait a minute, I'm connected to other consciousnesses, I'm connected to my environment, I'm connected to the context of time. What I do actually has an impact. I'm not just swimming around in my own private kiddie pool of my mind. I'm connected to an ocean of consciousness. Then all of a sudden you have to start to take responsibility and say, wow, what I do affects others, and what others do affects me. And that is the beginning of true embodiment of love. That is running the operating system known as OS Love, because there is such a profound level of interconnectivity. Yourself as an individual, to the planet that you live on, all of the other organisms that are here, the stars, where all of our consciousness and energy originates from. It is all connected. And yes, it's a wonderful realization. You become part of the cosmic symphony. Thank you for being with me on this journey, and please continue to dance like your own version of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna.